In May this year, the Chinese government released long-awaited census data, the largest national survey of around 7 million people. The latest data has given us some new and fascinating insights into China's social and demographic changes over the past 10 years, including unintended consequences from its one-child and two-child policies. In this interview, I speak with Dr Ye Liu from King's College London about what this data tells us about the challenges facing China in the years ahead. Yeah, welcome to the China Puzzle. Some of the key takeaways that we've seen in China's latest census data include the population's growing at its slowest rate, there's an aging population, and the birth rate is kind of concerningly low, I guess. Why are these findings so significant?
It is significant because recent data shows the total fertility rate reached to the historical lows of 1.3. It has no kind of impact on China's future economic growth, and it is significant because it affects China's kind of ambition to become a global superpower. If we look at the birth rates, and it's predicted to continue to decline in the next 20 years. So the UN data shows, population forecast shows that by 2050, China's working population will shrink around 10%. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, the age-dependent population, those under 50 and those over 65, particularly those over 65, will double by 2050. So this is significant because it will have such a huge knock-on impact on China's future labor force, particularly prime labor force.
So our viewers will be familiar with the one-child policy, and that was aiming to decrease the rate of China's population growth during the 80s and 90s. That ended in 2015 when the two-child policy was introduced. What sparked this policy shift from the Chinese government?
Between 2006 and 2015, when the two-child policy was introduced, China's birth rate declined continuously at a very alarming level. So it's around the total fertility rate, which means the women of a fertility age, and had on average around 1.5 children. So at the time when two-child policy was introduced, China's total fertility rate was 1.4. So at a very kind of alarming level, and the ideal kind of fertility rate around 2.1. So China's birth rates, fertility rates really declined at a very alarming level. So that's the background.
Yeah, you've spoken about the need for China to invest in its care infrastructure. What does that look like on a practical level?
So I talk about innovative and holistic approach to address care infrastructure, because care infrastructure has been used in States, in Europe, as a public good. I think in China, we really need to think care infrastructure as public good, as a collective public good. So first of all, Chinese central government need to increase public spending early child care support, particularly in terms of providing subsidies to public daycare centers, kindergartens, and childcare providers. It can be a collective initiative. We recently have seen some examples from Shanghai, particularly across all districts in Shanghai. There is increase in public daycare providers. So it can be possible when the government and local communities work together and build a care infrastructure that can be beneficiary to all. And this Pudong area is very interesting because Pudong has one of the largest migrant worker population. So if we also need to look at the hukou policy and how the government could incentivize the non-native population to feel confident enough to have children in the cities where they work. So this is another side of the kind of a collective initiative to invest more in care. And another thing I think the government need to do is to invest more in early childhood training. So for the moment, from my interview data, so from 2017 and 2018, I've interviewed 28 women. They're from one-child families, women themselves from one-child family, and now they become mothers and wives, and I ask them about their thoughts about childcare. And one of the key issues emerging from my interviews is their confidence, their trust in private childcare providers, because most of the childcare workers are not trained, not qualified, and also the childcare centers were not regulated properly. We have seen some scandals about child abuse in the private childcare centers. So all these kind of factors affected the trust of individual families in the whole care providers. If the government could shift priorities, invest more in early childcare education, early childcare training to provide childcare workers with strong qualifications, and also provide them with more like kind of a lifelong training with updated training material classes to boost the public confidence in this new professionalized occupation. So that would also help individual families to send their children and babies before age of 3 to public care centers.